So many directors have recently thrown their hat into the ring to direct the next Nightmare on Elm Street film. In today's video, I want to rank all 6 of them by how much I want to see their vision of Elm Street come to life. I'm also going to tack on a bonus director at the end of this video, somebody who I think would be perfect for this series. Let's talk a little bit about it.
What's your favorite scary movie?
Be afraid. Be very afraid.
I want to be a fighter, like you.
Oh, let it burn! Let it burn!
Did you miss me?
You have to shoot them in the head. They always come back.
The boat can leave now. Tell the crew.
Well, sometimes that is better.
Good luck.
Hey everybody, I'm KillJoy Jake, and today I found a wasp in my car after I was coming home from the gym. Thankfully, he flew away after I rolled down the window, but I was about this close to just lighting the whole thing on fire. The only reasonable thing to do in that situation. Speaking of lighting things on fire, Mr. Freddy Krueger is the topic of today's video. Who should helm the next The Nightmare on Elm Street flick? Well, in the last year or so, there's been 6 notable directors who have said that they wanted to get their finger knives all over Mr. Krueger. Now, before we get into all of that, I do just real quickly want to hit the refresh button in case anybody out there does not know what the hell is going on with the Nightmare on Elm Street series. There are technically 2 different Nightmare on Elm Street movie projects in the works currently over at Warner Bros. And Paramount. You can check out my last Freddy video if you want a detailed explanation as to why this may not be a good thing for franchise fans and why I think only one of these films will actually release. With all of that being said though, I think A Nightmare on Elm Street is definitely going to continue at some point. So who should do the next one? Well, let's get into the rankings. Chatting with Dread Central about his new flick on Amazon Prime, The Devil's Mouth, Jeff Wadlow was asked if he would want to make his own Freddy movie, as a new installment was recently announced. He stated, "Oh my god, I love Freddy. Who wouldn't want to do that? Yes." Sadly, there has to be somebody in last place here, and for me, without hesitation, that would be Mr. Jeff Wadlow. While I have enjoyed a few flicks from his catalog like Cry Wolf, and most recently The Devil's Mouth with Catherine Newton, which was actually pretty good, Wadlow is responsible for some of the most infamous slop that Blumhouse has ever put out. He helmed flicks like Truth or Dare, Fantasy Island, and the stinkiest of all, Imaginary, for the Disney of horror over the years. I'm just not too crazy about his generic and sporadic filmography. That to me is a square peg in a round hole kind of situation, especially when it comes to Nightmare on Elm Street. This is a franchise that thrives on personality, especially with its central figure, who is of course chock full of charisma. I just don't think Jeff would offer up anything that would be too different than the 2010s remake. During an interview with comicbook.com, Rob Savage stated that Nightmare was one of his favorite horror franchises, and he'd love to jump headfirst into that surreal sandbox. While the trailer for his upcoming flick, Other Mommy, is currently building hype for this fall, he's also the filmmaker behind the incredible found footage flick Host from 2020, which may just be the best pandemic horror flick that came from that era. Rob is a bit hit or miss for me. While Host is incredible and Other Mommy looks like it has the potential to be a Smile-esque runaway hit this fall, his other 2 features, Dashcam and The Boogeyman, were major duds. Savage always has a touch of the supernatural in all of his projects, however, which is why I think he would be better suited for this series than others. Host is remembered for its unforgettable jump scares, but it also has a bunch of humor with the characters before any scary ghosts arrive. He's not my first choice, but I wouldn't be upset if he cast his line into the Freddy pool. Curry Barker has to be the most talked about new kid on the block this year, after his little indie film obsession blossomed into one of the most profitable and well-received horror films of all time. Barker had an incredible summer after the film's explosive release in mid-May, entering post for his next flick, Anything But Ghosts, signing a contract with Universal to produce another original feature, and working with A24 on the next installment in the Texas Chainsaw Massacre series. During one of the many interviews he did during this time, he said he would love to take a crack at Nightmare because of the franchise's unlimited potential. After seeing what Barker can do in his horror shorts here on YouTube and his 2 feature films, Milk and Cereal and Obsession, I think Barker would approach the series with the kind of professionalism he brings to everything else. There's no doubt in my mind that Curry Barker would make one of the best Nightmare on Elm Street sequels, for sure. With that being said though, I think Curry may be a better fit for Texas Chainsaw Massacre than he is for Elm Street. Curry is somebody who has such a unique vision that I don't see him compromising anytime soon on. For him to be doing named The Texas Chainsaw Massacre a franchise that desperately needs to be reinvented right now after multiple meandering sequels that treat Leatherface like a Michael Myers type slasher villain, that just makes so much sense. Nightmare is in such a different place as a franchise versus Texas Chainsaw Massacre, because the last big project we got in the series was back in 2010, of course, the remake movie that is such a departure from everything else in the series, with a darker tone and an entire plot that kind of just rehashes stuff from the sequels. Nightmare on Elm Street needs more of a return to form, and the way that Curry Barker talks about approaching projects, he has a unique vision. He likes to reinvent things, and I just don't think that's what Elm Street needs right now. Nightmare needs a return to form, and like I said, I'm sure Curry Barker would put out something really cool, but it's also going to be his own unique vision, his own unique take on the source material. That might get a little too far away from what some of the older fans are really wanting from this series after not getting a bona fide Nightmare on Elm Street movie really since the 90s. He's gonna bring something a little more Gen Z conceptually to this series that, again, down the line I think would be dope, but right now to bring the franchise back, I think we just need something a little more familiar. Even though he's one of my favorite filmmakers on today's list, I just think there are better fits for this series. Jane Schoenbrun's third feature, Teenage Sex and Death at Camp Miasma, premiered at the top of the month and is finally getting a wider theatrical release at the end of this week. During a recent interview with Screen Rant, they said, "I'm trying to get a meeting on this Nightmare on Elm Street thing. I would love to do that." Jane has even said in the past that their new movie is heavily inspired by Dream Warriors, and obviously Friday the 13th if you've seen the trailers. I think Jane's sophomore feature, I Saw the TV Glow, alone proved that they could do a trippy nightmare flick filled with oversaturated dream sequences. The fictional Pink Opaque show is obviously inspired by Buffy the Vampire Slayer, but you can't tell me that Mr. Melancholy wasn't at least a little inspired by Freddy Krueger. Jane would not only bring a unique approach to Nightmare on Elm Street, but also something that has a bright color palette, something I feel this series really needs, especially, and I'm sorry to sound like a broken record, but after the 2010 remake that's all dark, gross, and yellow, I would love to see something with some brighter colors. Again, very similar to Dream Warriors. With all of that being said, I have the same feelings about Jane as I do with Mr. Curry Barker. I just feel like their approach would be too different than what people are really hoping for from this franchise right now. Look at Camp Miasma, for instance. It may be borrowing some franchise ideas, but it's clearly more of a surreal romance horror that's likely going to play as more of a satirical piece rather than an actual slasher film. I would love a Jane Schoenbrun Nightmare on Elm Street flick, but I think to bring the franchise back first, we need to do something that feels a little more familiar before we start diving into some extremely experimental territory. So how about Jane and Curry do like the second and third parts of this requel trilogy? That would be perfect. Can I just be honest for a second? I want Mike Flanagan to do a sequel in every horror franchise. I don't know if there's another horror filmmaker who is more consistent than this guy, and he's even told Bloody Disgusting's Boo Crew podcast before that he has a killer pitch for a new Nightmare. If this world wasn't so messed up, Mike Flanagan would be pitching that idea to a studio right now. Mike is one of my top choices, not just because his batting average is well above average, but because he's proven that he can really do every genre. While he's best known for his ghost stories on Netflix or movies through Blumhouse, Flanagan has also dipped his toe into slashers and found footage. His 2016 film Hush is one of the best modern cat and mouse thrillers that I've seen, and he even wrote a VHS segment that his uber-talented wife Kate Siegel directed. Would you believe me if I said that Stowaway was a top 10 vignette from the entire VHS franchise? Of course you could, because Mike Flanagan clearly made some sort of deal with the devil to have the Midas touch of horror. Hey Mike, hook me up with his number, I'm ready to sell my soul too. His Freddy movie would be just as immaculate as everything else he does, there is no doubt in my mind about that. While promoting his latest film earlier this year, an Evil Dead-inspired take on The Mummy, Lee Cronin was asked what other horror franchises he'd like to tackle. Cronin stated, "I would find it very hard not to have a swing at old Freddy Krueger, because he haunted my nightmares throughout my entire childhood and still pops up about 4 times a year." Cronin is also rumored to be developing a Nightmare movie for Warner Bros. Right now in this ridiculous ongoing studio race. I think he's the perfect choice. Cronin hasn't made anything as impressive as some of Mike Flanagan's better projects, but I just think his style matches Nightmare more than any other filmmaker in the space right now. He always makes an effort to balance his tone between scary, campy, and just plain gross, especially in his last 2 films. I know everybody's criticism of his Mummy movie that it's less Carl Freund and more Sam Raimi, but imagine some of those one-liners that Katie throws out in that movie coming from Mr. Freddy Krueger.
Don't worry, Grandma.
It's fun to be dead.
You can tell from his style alone that he's a big fan of this series, but Cronin also made a point to reference Freddy Krueger in Evil Dead Rise.
Moms on nights and we're watching all the Freddy movies in a row.
Even the shitty ones.
There aren't any shitty ones.
If you want a nightmare movie just like the 1984 original that understands when to be scary, when to be campy, and when to be gross, I promise you Lee Cronin is the guy. Now there is one other director that I have to throw this guy's name out because I just feel like in his last project, he proved he could make a Nightmare on Elm Street movie. That is of course Mr. Scott Derrickson. Derrickson's latest effort, Black Phone 2, turned the 2021 horror hit into a franchise with a sequel that some would argue is even better than the original. The sequel takes a clear influence from Elm Street as the serial killer, the Grabber, comes after our main characters from beyond after his brutal death at the end of the first film. Now the Grabber in Black Phone 2 is definitely a darker approach to a supernatural killer similar to Freddy Krueger, but I actually think Scott Derrickson could find something new with this franchise through a darker tone. Unlike the 2010 remake. Okay, that's the last time I'm gonna say that in this video. I'm so sorry. I also want to apologize to fans of that remake. Before we wrap up today's video, please make sure to like it and subscribe to this page for more updates on the most exciting horror projects. You can also listen to horror updates on Spotify while you're on the go. Also, the best way to support this channel is by becoming a patron on Patreon. Over there, you can find a ton of bonus content like reactions to various horror TV shows and movies. We're currently watching Dexter and Hannibal with multiple episodes going up there a week. No, what? Check it out by clicking on the link in the description below. One final plug and I'll shut the heck up. Please make sure to also check out my film channel, Human Egg Productions, where we're currently posting horror and comedy short films.
Hey, Daddy, I'm gonna rip your nutsack out of your asshole.
See? Full deadite. I'm gonna have to put you down, boy.
If you like slashers especially, check out the gory short I wrote and directed called Chicken Man. Thank you to everyone who supports all of my pages. With so many great filmmakers fighting tooth and nail to helm the next Nightmare on Elm Street project, who do you think should do it? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. Thank you guys so much for watching, please subscribe, and as always, don't forget to kill it out there, y'all.